Welcome to Channel X TV, sponsored by Volo. Delighted today to be joined by James Rigg, CEO of Trojan Electronics, who I think we last spoke to getting on for a year ago. But how are you, James?
Yeah, I'm doing really well, Chris. So it's definitely, I think, a year ago. It was last April or May we last spoke. Yeah, I'm doing very well, and Trojan's doing well. We've had a very exciting year in trying to increase, refurb, and repair and reduce product going to landfill.
Yeah, so tell us about Trojan. What is the shape of the business today? We all know that you do refurb, largely consumer electronics type products, but what's new? What's changed with the business?
So there's quite a few changes this year, actually. So we do. So there's three sides to it. We do an awful lot of refurb and sustainability, but we also do new product sales and e-commerce management for manufacturers as well. Um, I think last year we were doing a huge amount of proof of concepts with lots of retailers, and some of those have come very good, and some of them didn't make it beyond the proof of concept. I think we saw last year a lot of people testing ESG and sustainability and trying to find something that worked for them. Um, and not all retailers have found a solution that works well for them.
Hmm.
But on the good side, some of the manufacturers, people like Melita, who do the bean to cup machines, who have incredibly repairable devices that with interchangeable parts. So we're now doing the repairs for Melita, and they sell them on their own website as looks like new. We are doing the UK repair and warranty repairs for all KitchenAid products, so the beautiful food blenders and
The
food
food blenders in
products.
I love them because you can have them in practically whatever colour you want.
Whatever color you want. We have a huge amount of spare parts, and a lot of that is colors. There's a huge amount of colors people can choose. It's incredibly personal and intimate. Is the blender to people who buy KitchenAid, um, and the product lasts 10 years. So like we can fix that product for 10 years plus, and every part of it is interchangeable. So every part can be taken out and replaced with a new part. So people like Melita, people like KitchenAid, people like Flame Fires, the Glen Dimplex fire company. Again, all those parts can be interchanged, and we're doing the UK repairs and refurb for their returns now as well. So what we've seen is some very good products that are repairable come live as clients, and we're delighted to do that. We've seen some slight changes in how we're working with the major domestic appliances. So some of the very large white good brands that you'll recognise, where their goods were coming to our site here in Swansea. I'm in Swansea today, to our Swansea site for repair. But what we're now doing increasingly is sending field teams out to the manufacturer to do on-site repairs. So we're trying to reduce that extra touch of moving the product back and forth. So we've seen an increase in at their site field repairs, and an increase in products which are designed to be repaired coming through our Swansea site. So that's been our focus for the last 12 months.
So I'm already loving Melita and KitchenAid because I like products that can be repaired. If you can repair it, it's so much cheaper than having to buy brand new and just throw it into landfill. But talk to me about what type of products can be rescued and repaired. And I'm more interested in the kind of the unexpected ones, the ones you think are just beyond repair. And I'm thinking things like, what if I've got a flat screen TV and I've actually cracked a screen? What's the most unexpected things that you can actually refurb and get back into service?
So there's a misconception that there's a price point for goods that are worth repairing and prices that are too cheap to be repaired. So people throw some stuff where they think it's just too cheap to repair. And some research from Austria this year said that consumers think that anything up to 30% of the price of the new item as a repair bill, they'll pay that. But beyond 30%, they put it in the bin and buy new. So there's a threshold in people's heads around what they think is a repairable value. But when you look at what is good for repair that people don't realize, if you look at a product like Babyliss and Tresemme, the hair products, yeah, they're pretty simple products, but actually they can be refurbed and repaired and resold. So they're not massively high in value when they're new, not like a TV, which could be several £100s. But they are ones which can be quite easily recovered, repaired, some interchangeable parts to make them good. I think the example that you gave at the start is one of the worst examples. So flat screen TVs and Apple iPhones are up there with the ones which are not really designed to be, sorry, they are not designed to be repaired at a fair price. So for a smash screen, it's a whole new screen. So interestingly, what we did 2 years ago, we did a deal with a huge UK wholesaler who's on big retail parks, where we took all their smash TV screens in for all the brands, and we sourced the equivalent screen, not the original manufacturer screen, but the equivalent screen from the Far East, and brought them in containers. And we did a very huge exercise of, can we take what is a good TV with a good sound system and good aesthetics and all this sort of stuff, and can we put in there a generic screen that is identical? Because you get these screens that are identical to the manufacturer but not the same grade. And can we put that in, make sure there's no dust, and return them as a viable product? And we processed thousands of these. I'm not sure if it's tens of thousands, but definitely in the thousands. And we couldn't. It's the answer to that. We couldn't make the economics work, because when you change a screen, the breakage rate is higher than you'd like, and therefore the screens were really hard. So what we have done, interestingly, is we've started a new company 2 years ago called Arera, and we take all the TVs in from about half of the UK councils now, I think. And we have a laser machine that cuts out the screen, separates all the plastic laminates into different components, and then we get maximum recovery at a component level for the bits in the TV that can't be repaired. So what we've done is we've tried the repair. It didn't cost in, but we can absolutely recover all these bits that have been glued together. We can strip them back out again and make them into usable parts.
This is really interesting. Going back to what you said about the products that you kind of think are too cheap to repair, and I've got to put my hand up here and say, actually, I did one myself a couple of weeks ago. I had an orbital sander, and you know the sort of hook bits underneath that you stick the pad to, they were just worn flat. And I was thinking of getting a new sander, and a mate of mine actually said to me, can't you just get a new pad? And blow me down, for about £6 or £7, you can get a new pad, just screw it on, it's as good as new. But
there's so much you can get, and it's so easy to repair things for most things. And the ability to even go to eBay and buy a broken one, and then take the bit off you want, plug it onto yours, and make yours fixed. And like it's so much easier than people realize to repair stuff either yourself or through a repair center like us. But there's a fear because it's something they haven't done before. One of our things, I think I was involved in an apprenticeship discussion with somebody very recently, saying that we're not training people to be tomorrow's repairers. We're not making it attractive for anyone to go through a route of repairing product. So we have this demand for repair. So we did a survey on consumers recently, and around 83% of consumers think that the manufacturers should offer repair. Interestingly, 75% of consumers think consumers should do more to improve sustainability as well. So it's not all a one-way street. But what we find is we can't recruit any apprentices on a white goods repair course that's suited for refurb and repair of white goods and SDA and small items. There's no apprenticeships out there that suit that need. So there's a whole host of kids coming through that in 10 years' time will be tomorrow's repairers and trying to repair product rather than landfill it, but actually we're not training them. So there's a void there that we need to be addressed.
And just how big is the problem? I mean, how much stuff in the UK do you reckon we actually throw away that could be repaired, and compared to things that are just damaged new returns or whatever, that essentially it's a new product that's been damaged? But how much of the stuff in our houses and businesses could be repaired, and we're just literally throwing it in the bin?
So it's almost all either repairable or the parts in it could be used to repair somebody else's. So it's very rare that something is completely useless. It can all be repaired, even if it's just to separate the plastics from the metals from the rubber and other components and break them into parts that they can be reused rather than go to landfill. But almost repairable. The smash screen example is a great one where that's not repairable. But almost everything else is repairable or has parts that somebody else could use. And I think this whole thing at the moment with the government and consultation around curbside pickups and taking back the waste, at the moment, there's no process to take that back and find the spare parts in there that could be reused. So, so back to the milliter example we talked about earlier. On the milliter, all the spare parts that we used to fix those products came from the other parts, the other units that came in that were smashed and broken and couldn't be repaired in themselves. So the grinders, the sensors, the water trays, all of that came from harvesting. So if you can imagine a situation where all the retailer returns or electrical returns are going back to somewhere where the good parts are harvested and then reused cheaply, because it's not a brand new part, it's a harvested part. So made available cheaply for somebody like you or a repair center to repair the product themselves. That's what you really want to get to.
Yeah, and this is something I really wanted to ask you. I like the fact that you're saying you can harvest parts to get cheap spares, because I wanted to dig into how repair costs stack up as opposed to the potential eventual resale of an item. So you've already said on the TVs that if the screen's gone, it's just not economically viable. But on other products, what's the general, I mean, labour costs have gone through the roof. Even the minimum wage goes up in April this year. So even those companies paying absolute minimum, their costs are going up. So how do repair costs stack up against the resale value by the time you've either bought the parts or paid an employee to harvest parts, and then you've fitted them to the new part, and then there's shipping and everything? Can we actually repair items and retain enough value that it can be sold and everyone can make a bit of profit?
So yeah, so almost all items can be sold to make a profit after repair. The question is how far do you go with the repair? So for an example, on air fryers, so air fryers currently are a must-have product, and an awful lot of them are out there.
I've got one.
Yep,
love it.
Everyone's got one, I think. Everyone's got one. So on an air fryer, a lot of the faults actually are not necessarily major faults. So you can take the drawers out and take the smashed hinges and so on off another device and fix it quite cheaply. So air fryers are very good ones to repair and clean up and resell. Because the cost of carriage is whatever it is, £3, £4, £5, depending on the weight of the product. And because the selling fees on the marketplaces range around, I don't know, 10 to 15%, depending on the marketplace. All of a sudden, if a product is £50, so if a product is £99 new, it will sell for around £49 as a refurb. Yep. Take off the VAT, which is 20%, so you're at £40. Take off the carriage, which is around a £5, you're at 35. Take off the selling fees, which are around 15%, and all of a sudden you put it down to £25 left on the product, and that is to cover the refurb element and the money back to the original manufacturer or retailer. So there's a price point where sub £99 new, it doesn't always cost in. But in our example, like I gave you the one before on the Bible list and stuff, and the hair straighteners, there's always a way to make it cost in, because many of these aren't broken. Yeah, a very simple fix on many of these will put the product back to being sellable. And like with everything, if we have a batch of them, so if someone sends us in 3,000 units, it's very cheap for us to quickly move them down the line. If someone sends us in 10s and 20s, then the cost of stop and start is more expensive than the cost of the actual repair in the middle. So we tend to say to people that we don't have a minimum threshold. We try and sell everything and try and find what's the best price point that we can recover for that.
Now, this is quite interesting because the costs are obviously really stacking up. And one thing that's just struck me is you mentioned the 20% VAT plus the selling fees plus the shipping fees. But you're on the record as saying you want the UK to establish itself as the kind of repairability and circularity capital of the world. What can government do to enable and encourage this? And as well as the costs, you've also mentioned apprenticeships just aren't there to train people to do this. Where should government be stepping in to really move the needle, not just for Trojan, but and potentially not just for electronics, but across the whole gamut of products, from everything from sofas to clothing to anything that can be repaired, refreshed, and put back into use has got to be better than landfill?
So we think there's three main areas that the government can do to encourage an increase in sustainability, an increase in awareness of options to improve recovery, sustainability, and an increase in developing tomorrow's people to do the work around, the repairs around for sustainability. I think there's a couple of key things that we really want to see happen. First thing is VAT on spare parts and VAT on repairs labour. We think it's a disincentive to do a repair when you're paying VAT for both the spare parts and for the labour, which is a fifth of the price. So on a £50 repair, £10 of that is going to be the VAT. So our first thing is to remove VAT for repair of products which are not brand new. So we want to see the VAT removed. The second thing that I think the government can do is to put a traffic light system similar to what they did with food many years ago, but to put a traffic light system on the front of the product to show how much of it is repairable, how many spare parts can be accessed, is it designed to be interchangeable. So an example there would be if we use the Melita coffee machine again, it would be green everywhere, 100% interchangeable, 100% spare parts available, same with KitchenAid. If you put an iPhone on there, it would just be red everywhere. Yeah, this product has spare parts that are unaffordable. The parts can't be interchanged. If you have two iPhones side by side and change the screens, you have an error message here saying that this screen's not original, even though it's a brand new in the screen that's the same. So I think Apple, if you had an old Nokia 6310, you'd have greens again because it's all interchangeable. So I think a traffic light system that consumers can understand, and when they're choosing between two products, one may be at £99 and one at £89, but the £89 is all red and can't be repaired, and the £99 is all green and designed to be interchangeable. I think if consumers are aware of the differences, that may help them to change or go for the one that is better for the environment. Now, interestingly, we did a survey on this recently.
And not just for the environment, but for their own pocket when they can get it repaired.
Totally. And this goes back to the whole thing around people will spend up to 30% of the value of a new product to get something repaired. That seems to be the threshold in people's heads. So if it's £99 for a new product and £30 for a repair, they'll do the repair. If it's £40 for the repair, they won't. The dearest part of the repair normally is the spare parts. If we go back to this idea of curbside collections, harvesting spare parts that can be used again, all of a sudden spare parts become almost free. You're paying just for the labour to extract them. Someone's already paid most of the spare parts. So remove the VAT, make spare parts accessible, so cheaper, ideally from harvesting. Use a traffic light system so people can see if it can be repaired or not repaired, interchangeable, not interchangeable. They're the three things we really want to see change in motivations to consumers to do sustainability. And then the fourth part is to create an entire skilled team of people, or youngsters today who will be tomorrow's engineers and repairers, to go out there and do the work in the next 5 and 10 years' time.
And I really like that idea of the traffic light system, because it's an indicator to me. If I've got a product, and let's say it's something like my old Hoover, and I've broken the hose and the handle's fallen off and it's fallen to bits, but if it was green traffic lights, and I knew I could give that to someone and they could maybe take the motor unit out or put new brushes, whatever it is, they can take parts of it that are still good and use it to repair others. I'd much rather do that, give it away for free to someone that can harvest the parts, than just toss it into the landfill.
And also, it'll create a whole new industry. So if the parts, if the system is traffic lighted, if you know full well that your product, when it goes faulty somewhere out there's a spare part, and somebody can come and change it because it's been designed in, someone's designed the product to be interchangeable, that will create an entire new category of industry, probably local industry, where people, a bit like the old Dragon Ball man, where people are taking in these e-waste from curbside collections, taking out all these bits of spare parts on these common items that everybody seems to need, and then within 5 years or so, there's a whole new industry that grows up around this, which would be local, VAT free on the repair labour, because there's no VAT on labour, shouldn't be for repairs. And this cottage industry will grow locally, not just people like us who would use it, in big central warehouses, but people locally. All these young kids going through the apprenticeship, well, hopefully on an apprenticeship scheme to do repairs and stuff, will then become the next gas repairman. At the moment, the people do the gas schemes and then they go self-employed and become boiler engineers. There's a whole route there now for people to go down and be repair sustainable parts, little companies.
And I have to say, James, this sounds like a revolutionary idea, but thinking about it, this is something that's been going on for decades in the car industry with vehicle dismantling and harvesting parts. And it's really not that complicated when it comes down to it. I mean, almost everyone that's got a car has at some point bought a second-hand part for it from, might have been eBay or somewhere, or they've actually been to a vehicle dismantlers, or my garage has even used reclaimed parts in the past. So this isn't really a new concept. It's just that why aren't we doing it for the domestic appliances in the same way that we do for vehicles? So going back, you're saying we need the traffic light system so that we know what's repairable at the point of purchase and when it comes to considering a repair, keeping the repair cost down below about 30% of the purchase price to make it economical.
Yep.
Taking the VAT off the cost of the parts and the labour to do the repair, and making sure that these parts are harvested and available.
Totally, and that's it. If we can do those four things, we've cracked it then, haven't we? We've got access to a never-ending stream of spare parts, because all these units that are going back out of circulation create their own spare parts that go back in to keep the new products going, and a skilled workforce, and the government, rather than charging VAT, which is the value-added tax, on something which is not a value-add, it's a spare part to keep something going, are also contributing back to consumers to make it more affordable. And they can go further than that, by the way. They can stimulate people wanting to do repairs. So again, in Austria and I think also in Germany, there is discount vouchers from the government up to €200 per year that you can spend towards repairs or product, and you get 50% of the repair back off your voucher. So they're almost doing half price repairs funded by the government. And again, it's stimulating people to change behavior, to realize, actually, I don't have to throw it away. I can go away with this, and I can get a discount off a repair, and that's what I want. And also, to add to that, also what consumers really want actually is they want a quality repair, not a cheap repair. So in our surveys, they want the manufacturer to stand behind the quality repair rather than being some random person that they don't know. So for example, with Melita, they're selling Melita on their own website, so they're clearly standing behind the refurbishment. And if the repair centres also could have the multiple brands of approval, then that would make people feel more comfortable about not wasting money on a repair that might break again in 3 months' time. People don't want to spend money and then spend it again. It's trying to make sure that we give them confidence and credibility.
So I really like the idea of this, but we are in an election year. What's the realistic prospect of a government, whether the Conservatives looks unlikely, but supposing they get in again, or if Labour comes in, what's the appetite for government for actually doing something about this? They're always banging on about net zero, 2030 dates, 2050 dates. What's the chance of them doing something actively to encourage repairs and reduce landfill?
So it's really tricky because they do talk a good story, and it's always a long way down the road. There's very few tangibles tomorrow that we could point at and say, actually, you know what, you committed to something this year, next year, and you haven't done it. I think to change the VAT on access to spares is relatively straightforward. It could be done quite easily. And I think that's something they could do quite quickly and genuinely saying we are making a difference and we're taking VAT off to make repairs 20% cheaper. I think that's something that they could do and should do pretty quickly. I think it's wrong that there's VAT on repairs. I think beyond that, traffic light systems are something which they absolutely should do, but that probably will be 3 or 4 years of planning and consultation. But again, if 2030 is the magical date when all the carbon zero and all the initiatives should be in place, then the next government, whoever they are, need to be planning these things in as part of their 5-year plan to 2030.
Yeah, and by the time we have the election, there will be literally 5 years left. So it really is down to the next government to take notice. So if any MPs are listening to this, or prospective MPs, listen to James Rigg. Let's start making repair the normal course of action when you've got a product that's no longer working, whether you've dropped it and broken it or whether it's just worn out, and at least harvest the parts. So indeed. James, thank you so much for your time today. Fascinating as always. And we should definitely come back in 2030 and see if we've got there. But hopefully I'll have news before then to share with us.
Yeah, and hopefully I'll speak to you again in 12 months' time. We can continue our annual review of the previous year.
Yeah. Thanks so much for your time, James.
Brilliant.